Are you here, ma'am? Okay. Very soon our expert will continue. Okay. Welcome, ma'am. Ma'am, am I audible? Ma'am, your mic is muted.
Hello.
Yeah. Welcome, ma'am.
Welcome. So sorry, there was some problem with the system.
Yeah. No issue, ma'am.
Okay.
You can. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks for the introduction, although I could not hear what
Yeah.
you have used. And first of all, I extend my heartiest thanks to all the dignitaries who were present in the morning's inaugural session. And special thanks to VC sir, Professor Mukesh Verma ji, and Bedi sir, who has taken all the pains um, for conducting this particular program. Also, I am very thankful to Professor Rajat Mona sir. During her inaugural session, he has introduced something about the Bloom's taxonomy. So I would like to extend that further. And I am also thankful to Professor R.N. Khare sir. Now, coming to the session of today's session, which is on domains of learning, because many things have been discussed since morning in this particular context. And since CSVTU has also developed the outcome-based curriculum, and this particular program which is on implementation. So during the implementation, the very first thing which is to be focused that each and every teacher must understand the curriculum document. So I was also listening to the queries of many of you during the question answer sessions. Really, it is very difficult to implement a outcome based curriculum, although designing itself has taken itself 2 years for developing a outcome based curriculum. Now the teachers need to be trained so that first of all they must interpret the curriculum in the right perspective, because as a teacher we are already implementing the diploma curriculum. Now, since we need a better shift towards the outcome-based curriculum, because not many of the things have been changed. The content, to a large extent, is the same. And looking to the advancement in technology, some of the new practicals have been introduced. So, where the focus should be that as a teacher we must take care of. Now, before starting the session, first of all, I would like to know that how many of you have actually attended the induction program. Those who have attended the induction program, please write in the chat box so that I can have a brief understanding about your profile and how you understand the different things which I am going to discuss in this particular session, because this session, it is a very basic session which is on domains of learnings and the various taxonomy of learning domains. So how many of you have already attended the induction program conducted by NITTTR? आप में से किसी ने इंडक्शन प्रोग्राम अटेंड किया है, yes or no?
Yes, ma'am. I attended the induction program in NITTTR.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What
Yes,
about
I have
others?
attended, ma'am.
Because there are 60 to 70 participants. How many of you? 7 to 8 people they have told. So induction phase 1 only. Yes, madam. Yes. So some of you have written. So some of the terminology which is there in NBA manual also, and whenever you are developing a outcome based curriculum, so now many of you are writing, yes, you have attended, it is good, so you can betterly understand the various terminology. And secondly, I would like to know that how many of you are involved in the development of outcome based curriculum, which was designed in collaboration with NITTTR Bhopal for CSVTU, because now all the diploma programs, they are having the outcome based curriculum. So Ajay sir has written, he has attended the program, so you might be aware of each and every component of that particular curriculum. That is very essential, although it is not possible that all the teachers can be engaged during the design and development, and that is why there is a need for such programs where what are the things that are really very much required for implementation that need to be taken care of. So now in this particular session, I am going to discuss with you about the domains of learning. So what is your understanding about domains of learning? Can anybody tell? What is your understanding about domains of learning? You can unmute your microphone if you wish.
Ma'am, actually it classifies the learning. You can say the learning things. It classifies in different levels. How much in how much depth one has learned.
Okay, so your opinion is that it deals with the levels. Levels of what?
In-depth learning.
Level of in-depth learning. Anything else?
Ma'am, there are three domains
Very
of
good.
learning:
Okay.
psychomotor, affective domain,
Hmm.
and cognitive domain.
Cognitive, affective, and
And psychomotor.
psychomotor domain. So,
Yes, ma'am.
so actually, this is the thing which I would like to know from you all, that first of all, we must have an understanding of the domains of learning, what actually it is. And as the madam has rightly said, that there are three different domains of learning. Are you able to locate these three domains in your curriculum, which is with you, the outcome-based curriculum? ये जो थ्री डोमेन्स ऑफ लर्निंग है, क्या जब आप करिकुलम देखते हैं या उसको इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के पहले आप एक बार गो थ्रू करते हैं, आर यू एबल टू फाइंड आउट वेयर दीज थ्री डोमेन्स ऑफ लर्निंग आर?
Yes, ma'am. Somehow we find it.
Okay, very good. So actually, although it is not very specifically written that this is the cognitive and this is the psychomotor domain, but as discussed in the earlier session also, when we are saying that we are going for an outcome-based curriculum, Professor Thete has discussed with you the POs and the PO and PSOs, and if you have a relook, if you have a relook to the POs that are there for the diploma programs, the 7 POs, you will find that these 7 POs, they are related to basic discipline specific knowledge. The first PO relates to basic discipline specific knowledge. The second one is related to problem analysis. The third one is design and development of solutions. And fourth one is engineering tools. So if we, although the PO itself is at a very higher level, but you will find that even the NBA has taken care of all these three domains, and these 7 POs, the first 4 POs, they cater to the learning in cognitive and psychomotor domain. तो अगर आप फर्स्ट 4 PO देखेंगे, then you will find कि हमारे जो कॉग्निटिव लर्निंग और साइकोमोटर बेस्ड लर्निंग है, दैट इज कवर्ड थ्रू PO नंबर 1 to PO नंबर 4. When we come to PO number 5, 6, and 7, they caters to the need of the learning in the affective domain. So if we want to develop the wholesome personality of the students, then we need to develop the required skills in the students in all these three domains, and that is what we are going to discuss in this particular session. So please give me 2 minutes so that I can share my presentation with you. So, is my presentation visible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. So, well, in this particular session, we will be covering two things. As sir has allocated me 2 sessions. One is on domains of learning and writing the learning outcomes. So, first of all, we will be focusing on the domains of learning. And as you have already told that there are 3 domains of learning. there are three domains of learning. So on completion of this particular session, it is expected that you will be able to differentiate between the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domain of learning. Because although these we are saying that they are different domains, here by domain we mean that is the areas in which the actually the learning occurs, and we will be focusing on these three different domains, and
Your voice is not coming. He disconnect happening. Now, are you here?
Ma'am, you are muted.
Now, please unmute your mic. Your mic is mute, ma'am. और चलिएगा। I think your mic is mute. You are visible, but आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है. Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm able to. Okay, give me a minute because I have to take my PPT from the other system.
Okay, ma'am.
So I am really very sorry.
No issue, ma'am. Ma'am, please continue.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, 1 minute, sir. Are you able to see the presentation? Hello?
स्क्रीन शेयर मैम आपकी जो स्क्रीन है वो शेयर्ड है लेकिन इसमें प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं दिख रहा है मैम
Oh, okay, 1 minute. No, is it visible?
स्टिल नॉट मैम
Okay. No, is it visible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Is the presentation?
No, no, ma'am. Folder is showing.
फोल्डर इज शोइंग ओके यस मैम इट इज विजिबल नाउ
Oh, okay. So now you will appreciate that the human learning, it can be categorized into learning of intellectual skills, where we develop intellectual skills in the students, which is mainly related to the mental skills. The other area of learning is the learning of attitudes. We need to develop positive attitudes in our students, and together with the mental skills, intellectual skills, and the attitudes, for diploma students especially, we need to develop the hands-on or the physical skills. So these skills will be required by each and every student or every professional whenever they are performing the activities either at the workplace, school, home, or any other place. And that is the reason the understanding of domains of learning is very, very important. Now, in case of educational technologies, these categories, that is the intellectual skills, attitudes, and physical skills, they are known as the domains of learning, which we have already discussed. So cognitive domain, it mainly deals with the head part. That is, whenever there are certain mental activities which the student is performing, then we can say that the students, and that we are developing the cognitive skills in the students. So we need to understand that where the prominence is. These three areas or the domains, they are not the separate entity. ऐसा हम नहीं कह सकते कि whenever the cognitive skills are being developed, at that time we need not to develop the psychomotor or affective. It depends upon the nature, the context in which the skills are being developed. So cognitive mainly relates with the head part. Psychomotors is mainly related to hands and the legs, where we are using our muscle power, and the affective domain deals with the heart part. So these three domains are popularly also known as the 3H. So cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains, they are based on the involvement of the organs of our body. So whenever affective domain we are dealing with, then we need to develop those skills which the students, they are doing, taking into consideration their motivation or their inner willingness. And when the psychomotor is there, then the hands-on or the practical skills. So previously I asked you a question that have you ever seen these three domains? These three domains are there in our curriculum, but not as cognitive, but within the, whenever you are writing the CO for a particular course, if you are having a course which is having the theory and the practical part, both things are there, definitely in that particular course all the three domains will be there. We cannot omit any one of these domains, but the only thing is in our present education system we are focusing too much on the cognitive part and to some extent also the psychomotor part, but effective domain skills we are neglecting a bit, and also we are not assessing these things. So keeping in view the POs which are there, as I already told you that three of the POs they cater to the effective domain also. So it becomes necessary that we take these things into consideration. Now, for majority of the learning situations which you see, if you go through your curriculum, you will find that there is always a overlap in all these three domains. If you are asking the student to develop some cognitive skills or the intellectual skills or the skills which you are developing through the theory courses, then along with the cognitive part, many a times a bit of psychomotor is also there. But in both these domains, cognitive and psychomotor domain, always there will be some part of effective skills must be there if we want to develop the wholesome personality. So understanding of domains of learning, why we have kept this particular session, because if you understand the domain of learning, this will help you in effective curriculum design and implementation. Although your designing part is over, and as a consultant, we were very much aware of all these three domains and we have taken care of all these three domains while designing the curriculum. But during the implementation, you must also be aware of these three domains, because the learning activities, the way you have to teach those particular content at that time, you have to keep in mind that under which domain this particular skill is coming, and that will help you in deciding the way you are going to offer your sessions. So learning in cognitive domain, it mainly involves the mental processes. So whatever theory part which we are teaching, which are developing the mental activities or the intellectual skills in the student, it mainly covers the different sort of mental activities. The simplest one is student will start knowing the things and they are able to recall many of the things. So cognitive domain, it involves mental processes such as knowing and recalling. And once the student is able to know some of the new concepts, new theories, new principles, and they are able to cram them up and recall at the proper place, then the next sort of mental processes that are required includes understanding information and applying the knowledge in a particular situation. This is very much required. Then analyzing, synthesizing, problem solving, and decision making. So any of these skills or any of the outcomes which are there in your curriculum, if any of these mental processes are being involved in that particular thing predominantly, then we can say that this particular outcome falls under the cognitive domain. As I have already told you that there is always an overlap, but still many a times we need to categorize. And during the categorization, we keep in mind that where is the dominance of that particular activity. Whether the student need to utilize his brain to the maximum, then that particular outcome will fall under the cognitive domain. Now, coming to the learning in psychomotor domain, whenever there are certain outcomes or the skills that are mentioned in your curriculum, then we have to see that when the learning is occurring in the psychomotor domain, it mainly includes the practical skills where the student has to work with certain equipments, machines, such as setting up of equipments, operating and adjusting the equipments, operating and adjusting the machines, calibrating some of the instruments, applying pressure with hand, legs, and performing something. So all such activities where they are using their hands or a combination of their muscle power, hands and legs, then that falls under the psychomotor domain. Under the affective domain, the behaviors such as related to leadership, care, team building, willingness, interest, discipline, motivation, concern for health, concern for environment, all these things will be covered under the affective domain. So when you look to the POs that have been specified by NBA, you will find that under the PO number 6, which is on project management, there is a combination of things need to be developed in the students, such as they need to be a leader, they need to be an effective member, they need to communicate. So all these behavior actually falls under the affective domain. So now, by now you are familiar with all these three particular domains. Now, one of the major thing which teacher must understand is they must be able to categorize the learning in the different domains. And for this, they need to analyze the situation in which the learning has to occur on the part of the students. So this I will be explaining to you with the help of three different examples, and that will make the things more clearer. The first situation is explain Newton's third law of motion with the help of a neat sketch. I have taken a simple situation so that it is understandable to all the participants. So can any one of you tell that this particular situation falls in which particular domain? This particular situation falls under which domain? Can any one of you say? आप बता सकते हैं?
Cognitive domain.
Okay, very good. So why it is in cognitive domain?
Because in this explanation of Newton's law is there.
But at the same time, we want the students to explain it with the help of
diagram.
With the help of a diagram. So whether it will be a cognitive, psychomotor, or cognitive and psychomotor both?
Cognitive and psychomotor both.
Okay. Actually, previously also I told that we need to see the dominance. Where is the dominance? Because in this particular situation, the student will be utilizing his brain to the maximum, unless and until he knows the particular thing, how to explain. Even the sketch will not help. That will only be supportive. So in this particular situation, there is a dominance of learning in cognitive domain, because whatever he is learning in the cognitive domain, he has to either write, he has to give a sort of evidence for that particular thing. So although there is always an overlap, but considering the dominance, it comes under the cognitive domain. Now consider a second situation where the student has to drill a hole of 4 millimeter at the geometrical center on a given circular piece of mild steel. Now, in which domain this particular situation falls?
Cognitive and psychomotor.
Psychomotor.
Okay, one of you have told that cognitive and psychomotor. Purposely, I have given this particular situation. Again, where is the dominance? What actually final skill we want to develop?
Psychomotor.
Psychomotor.
Psychomotor, that is drilling a hole. But for drilling a hole, he must have a knowledge of about the geometrical center, the shape of the piece, the characteristic of mild steel. This background knowledge he must be having, but the dominance is of the drilling a hole of 4 millimeters. So whenever we are categorizing such situations or outcomes in the domains, we have to see that where is the prominence or what is dominant. So this situation indicates the dominance of learning in psychomotor domain. Now comes the third situation. Carry out welding following recommended safety precautions, because in many of your curriculum, similar type of course outcomes might be there.
Affective.
Affective domain.
Anyone else?
Affective domain.
Psychomotor and affective both.
Okay, dominance, whether the dominance is of psychomotor or affective.
Effective.
Affective.
Uh, now this is the second situation. First was to carry out the welding. Now I have changed the situation. Follow the recommended safety precautions during welding process.
Ma'am, it is dominance of affective domain.
And previous one?
Previous one is
Psycho.
dominance of psychomotor domain.
Yeah. So here I would like to emphasize that whenever you are analyzing a particular outcome, we have to first of all focus on the verb which we are using. So here the focus is on carrying out the welding. But during the welding, we want him to follow the recommended safety precautions, because at the tail end, we are giving that while doing the welding, they need to follow this. So here the dominance is on the welding part. The same situation, if we write it in this manner, now here the prominence is on the affective domain, that we want the students to follow the safety precautions. Okay. And when they have to follow the safety precautions, we will give the situation. So likewise, we have to analyze the outcomes, that in which domain a particular outcome is there, and this will help you to design how to teach that particular outcome to your students and how to design the learning activities for the students. So now these are the three domains of learning which you already know, that is the cognitive, psychomotor, and the affective. So we are giving too much attention to the cognitive part or the knowledge part which we are developing in the students. But together with this, if we want to make our students employable, we need to teach them practical skills, and together with knowledge and psychomotor domain, both of these cannot be developed if we develop the affective domain skills. So affective domain actually is the base on which we can develop the intellectual and the practical skills in the students. Now, this particular term, domain of learning, this was first, initially this terminology was introduced by Benjamin Bloom, and that is why all the educationists, they used to say the Bloom's taxonomy, and every time in all the curriculum design, whatever it is there, Bloom's name will come, because he coined this term domains of learning. And in the year 1956, he introduced his original taxonomy, which is known as the Bloom's taxonomy. And in the morning session, when Professor Mona was discussing, he was discussing about the Bloom's original taxonomy. But in outcome-based curriculum, now we are using the revised Bloom's taxonomy. So initially, Bloom, along with David Catherwall, they have designed the Bloom's taxonomy, and all the three domains of learning and their taxonomy initially were developed in between 1956 to 1972. After this, there was a very good report which is based upon learning the treasure within, to the UNESCO by the International Commission. This particular report was written by Jacques Delors, and it mentions about the four pillars of education. Although we are having three domains of learning, together with this, I request each one of you to read this particular report. These four pillars are nothing, but they are learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and learning to live together. To a large extent, it covers all these three domains, and this has a reflection in the revised Bloom's taxonomy. Revised Bloom's taxonomy, this was proposed by Lauren Anderson and the David Crethwall. Although David Crethwall worked with Bloom's initially when he was developing the original taxonomy, and Lauren Anderson, actually, he was the student of Bloom. So in the revised Bloom taxonomy, we will be discussing just after a few minutes, and that is the base for designing the curriculum And to a large extent, all the intellectual skills which we need to develop for proper understanding of those particular outcomes, whether it is at the CO level, session level, or the unit levels, if you understand the revised Bloom's taxonomy, that will help you to interpret the curriculum in a much better way. So he was the first to introduce the concept of taxonomy. So you might be knowing that by taxonomy means whenever there is anything which can be arranged in a hierarchical fashion, that is known as the taxonomy. So initially, Bloom suggested that the learning can be arranged in the hierarchical fashion, and accordingly, he introduced the Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain. So initially, he used this taxonomy for classification of objectives in the cognitive domain. And coming to the revised Bloom's taxonomy, I am not going to cover the old one, although to a large extent it is similar but different as well. As you all know, and as Professor Mona also described in the morning session, that Bloom's started with the knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, evaluation, and synthesis. These are the different levels which was proposed by Bloom's. So by taxonomy, he means that the learning need to be arranged in the hierarchical fashion. But now when it comes to revised Bloom's taxonomy, so revised Bloom's taxonomy, the one major thing which is there in the revised Bloom's taxonomy is that it is two-dimensional. How many of you are aware that the revised Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain is two-dimensional? आप में से कितने लोगों को मालूम है कि जो revised Bloom's taxonomy है, that is two-dimensional? Anyone? Please say yes or no.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So two-dimensional in a sense that it comprises of the two dimensions of revised Bloom's taxonomy are, the first one is the cognitive process dimension. That is the cognitive part. In the original Bloom taxonomy, the Bloom arranged the learning from simpler to complex in the form of a hierarchy, or you can say in the form of the steps. But when Lauren Anderson and Krathwohl, they worked again on the taxonomy of cognitive domain, they find that while designing the curriculum and implementing the curriculum, the teachers and the students, they are finding it difficult in interpreting the things. So they are of the opinion that it is better to introduce the second dimension in the Bloom's taxonomy, which is the knowledge dimension. जैसा आपने सुबह सर को भी सुना होगा और आप में से बहुत लोगों ने इंडक्शन में पढ़ा भी होगा कि the first level in the Bloom's taxonomy is the knowledge. So कई बार ये confusion भी रहता था कि if knowledge is the starting point of any learning, जब हम knowledge की बात करते हैं तो हमें लगता है कि हमें किसी चीज की knowledge है तो then it is the highest part. So again it is very confusing. So Lauren Anderson and Krathwohl, they identified the two different dimensions. So cognitive process dimension take care of the hierarchical part, which initially the Bloom has suggested, but instead of they have given it they have tried to convert it from the noun to a verb form so that the things can be more clearer. Now, the cognitive process dimension in the revised Bloom taxonomy, it comprises of 6 levels. And these 6 levels, they are arranged in steps from simple to complex. That is, The lowest level is the simplest one, and the highest level, that is the create, is the complex one. So they have arranged the learning that is occurring in the students from simple to complex, and also they have mentioned the hierarchy. That is, first they remember, and once they achieve this particular stage, then only they can go for understanding level. It is not possible to understand a particular thing without even knowing or remembering the basic factual information which is essential for that particular thing. And in order to apply a particular thing, the individual must have an understanding of the related concepts or the related principles. So whenever the learning has to occur at a particular level, it is assumed that the learning at the lower level has been achieved. तो इसलिए आप देखेंगे कि whenever we are writing the learning outcomes, so if there is a learning outcome at the analysis level, then it itself means that the student has already achieved the application level. So once you achieve a higher level, that automatically indicates that the learning at the lower level has been achieved. So these are the 6 levels which was proposed, and these 6 level comprises the cognitive process dimension of revised Bloom's taxonomy. Now coming to what actually these levels mean. Now if you have a close look to all these steps, so you will find that by remembering we means that the student will be able to retrieve the relevant knowledge from the long-term memory. There are certain facts, there are certain dates, there are certain places, there are certain names which need to be remembered. They need to be crammed up. So ऐसी कुछ knowledge हर area में, हर discipline में रहती है which the student need to remember. For example, units. Tables which the student need to remember, name of the scientist, discoveries that have been made. So many of the things need to be remembered. So at this first level, here the focus is that the students need to retrieve the, first of all, he has to store it in the memory, and teacher has to find out ways and means how the student can actually cram those particular things. And for that, many of the teachers, they are giving lot of practice to the students so that the things are permanent in their long-term memory. Now actually here what the teacher is supposed to do, to design such situations where they can recall or recognize the things. Whenever the teacher is asking the students to name a particular part of a particular machine which he has already taught, there he is giving him a situation to retrieve the information from the long-term memory. Now, once this particular level is achieved, the next higher level is the understand level. By understand level, we means that the student has to determine the meaning of the instructional messages, including oral, written, and graphic communication. So student on their own must be able to understand the messages which the teacher is delivering either in the class or giving to the students in the form of instructions or handouts, or if there are certain graphs or the data available, they must be able to derive the meaning out of that. The type of outcomes which need to be there at the understand level includes where the students need to exemplify or give examples for a particular situation. That is, they understand the situation and they give the examples, they classify the things into different categories, summarize the thing, compare the thing, and explain many of the things or describe many of the things. The next stage is where the student, the next one is the apply stage, and this is where we want the skills to be developed in the students. By application, we means that the student need to carry out a procedure in a given situation. And this situation must be different what the teacher has taught in the class. That is, he must be able to understand, and now he has to apply that particular thing in a given new situation. That is, either he has to execute something or he has to implement the things and apply those things. Now, when it comes to the outcome based education, and when you are designing the outcomes or the course outcomes, it is clearly mentioned in the NBA document that all your course outcomes must be at the application and above level. So here all the teachers need to see and need to relook to their curriculum that all their COs must be at application or above level. And if there are some of the things which are at the remember or understand level, definitely that need modification. Coming to the analysis level, as the term says, that analysis means we have to break the material into parts. Anything whole which is available need to be divided into the parts, and then deducting how they relate to one another and to the overall structure. So analysis need to be done, and we need to teach to our students how to carry out the analysis, and the behavior which need to be developed in the student at the analysis level includes that the student must be able to differentiate between the working of two different sort of machines, or it could be differentiate between the two things based upon the parameters that are available, or they need to organize, or they need to attribute. So such behavior need to be developed in the students. Coming to the evaluate level, now up to this level, in the original taxonomy, up to this level, things are more or less similar. Only thing is the first and second term have been changed. Previously, this was known as knowledge, and this was known as comprehension, and their interpretation was to a large extent is similar, which was proposed by the Blooms. But the changes that has occurred is at the last two level. According to Bloom's, evaluation is the highest level. Whereas Lauren Anderson and Catherwall, after doing lot of research, they found that before we create something, we need to go for some sort of evaluation where the learner need to make judgment based on identified criteria and the standards. So this capability we need to develop in the students, that they must know how to select the criterias for a particular thing, and then at the same time they need to develop the capability to make a sort of judgment of the usefulness of a particular thing based upon those criteria. So the behavior which can be developed at the evaluate level, it includes checking something, giving a critique based upon the criteria that has been specified. So it is expected that as a learner, many a times, if they develop a skill of analysis, they must also develop the skill of evaluation, where they evaluate the things which has already been there, or that has been developed by someone else, so that they can evaluate those things. But the highest level of learning is to create something new, that is putting the elements together to form a coherent whole, where something new can be developed by the student himself, where he can generate something new, where he can design something new, where he can come out with a new plan, or he produce something new. So these are the 6 level, where the highest level is the create. And the outcome-based curriculum, which is with CSVTU, they have been developed with this revised Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain, where one of the dimension is the cognitive process dimension. Now, is this dimension clear to all of you? Are these 6 levels clear to all of you? Shall I move further?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Continue.
Okay. Now, coming to the second dimension, that is the knowledge dimension. Now, in the revised Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge dimension has been divided into 4 different categories, as shown in this particular slide: factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and the metacognitive knowledge. How many of you are aware of these categories of knowledge? Are you aware of these categories of knowledge? Okay. So what actually the factual knowledge covers? Factual knowledge क्या cover करता है? Any one of you? Okay, let me discuss with you. Factual knowledge, actually, it includes the knowledge of terminology. All the courses, when the student is coming for a diploma program, there are a lot number of new terminologies that need to be discussed with the students, and that particular factual knowledge is not going to change over a period of time. And there are knowledge of specific details and elements that need to be understood by the students. So such knowledge which will remain same for a longer period of time, that will be covered under the factual knowledge. Fact, excuse me, आपका किसी का माइक्रोफोन ऑन है? So there is a सुंदराम सर, राम सर, आपका माइक्रोफोन ऑन है, प्लीज उसको बंद कर लीजिए. There is a difference. There is.
राम सर, प्लीज अपना माइक म्यूट कर दीजिए. मैम, आपका माइक म्यूट हो गया.
There is a difference between fact and factual knowledge. Do you know the difference? Now, according to Trethwall and Anderson, they considered that all those terms, so here specifically I have written the terminology, specific details, and the elements that need to be taught to the students in a particular discipline. So each course, it will contain a large number of labels and symbols, certain words, numerals, sign, pictures, both as verbal and non-verbal events, location, people, dates, etc. These will be covered under the factual knowledge. For example, although fact means those things, name of a person, or the capital of a particular country, or a capital, all these things are considered as a fact. But when it comes to the factual knowledge, the basic terminology like friction is a factual knowledge, and the concept of friction must be known to the students. What are these symbols, the different symbols or the engineering symbols that need to be used? All these will remain same for a very longer period of time. So all these things, the name of the parts, likewise, all these basic foundation things which we are going to taught to the students, that comes under the factual knowledge. When we come to the conceptual knowledge, it includes the classification, where we need to classify the things into different categories. It also includes the principles which we are going to taught. For example, if for example, Newton's third law of motion. Now, whenever we are teaching the students Newton's third law of motion, for every action there is equal and opposite reaction. So there is a relationship between two concepts, actions and the reactions. Similarly, there are different theories, their models and the structures. So conceptual knowledge means when we are teaching the students about the classification, such as types of soil, types of machines. So machine itself becomes a concept, but the classification becomes the conceptual knowledge. The relationship between the concept becomes the relationship between the concept becomes the principles, the theories, and likewise there are different models. Just as outcome based education, it is a particular model for curriculum design, although previously different models were available. But considering the certain basic things which are really required, like the cognitive, psychomotor and affective, now they have come up with a different model of curriculum development. Similarly, in while teaching, we might come across different models and different structures. Now, all the engineering programs which are having the practicals within it, there are certain procedural knowledge which need to be taught to the students, and this knowledge includes the knowledge of subject specific skills and algorithms. So certain practical skills, for example, how to operate a lathe machine, how to set up a micrometer. Likewise, all these things, all these procedures need to be taught. Knowledge of specific subject specific techniques and the methods that need to be used. What are the steps? At which place, which technique to be used? Like in the morning, some of you were asking that although for attainment of the outcomes, there are certain formulas and the algorithms, but it is very difficult because the techniques which we are using, the techniques are old, and we want to assess whether these outcomes have been achieved. So knowledge of techniques and methods is very, very essential. Knowledge of criteria for determining when to use a particular procedure. So here you will appreciate that in procedural knowledge, we are not developing the practical skills, but for developing a practical skill, what knowledge about the procedure he must know, that must be taught to the student. And the last one is metacognitive, which nowadays at every forum and at every place, a lot of emphasis is being given for developing metacognitive knowledge. Metacognitive knowledge, in one simple line, we can say that knowing about your own learning, that is metacognitive. If you can understand how much you yourself has learned, that is metacognitive. So metacognitive is knowledge about your own cognitive abilities, that what skills you are having, and at the same time the knowledge you are having about a particular task. When a task is given to the students, or when you have been allotted certain tasks, so as an individual you must have an assessment of your own cognitive skills, and at the same time knowledge of that particular task and knowledge of the different strategies that are available and when they are appropriate to the task. So although it looks very simple, but unless and until we provide opportunities to the students to develop these particular skills, and these are only possible when we can introduce the concept of reflective learning in the students. Because what is happening that even today there is a one-way communication where teacher is delivering the total content, and the students, they are rarely finding the opportunity to express whatever they have learned. So if we are giving the students certain practical, always always try to have a one-page reflection from the students that while performing this practical, what individual experience a student is having, that actually is required, and how a particular student has approached or carry out a particular experiment that can be developed through metacognitive knowledge. So in the nutshell, the revised Bloom's taxonomy, since I have told you, revised Bloom taxonomy is two-dimensional, where cognitive process dimension is only the one dimension. And we are mainly focusing on this, but without the knowledge dimension, revised Bloom's taxonomy is incomplete. So whenever you are looking, so it is my humble suggestion to all of you that whenever you are analyzing your curriculum, please take up a curriculum of your particular course and try to place your course outcome in the appropriate cell. For example, if you are picking up your course outcome, definitely your course outcome should not be at the remember and the understand level. So the first two column, the first two row will definitely be not there, and you have to start with the column number 3 only if it is a course outcome. But if it is a session outcome, some of the outcomes can be at the understand level. The beauty of this particular taxonomy table is that if you are having the outcomes and if you are able to place the outcomes in the appropriate cell, then you can decide about how to teach the students, and at the same time student also understand that what is expected of me. So this is in nutshell the Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain, that is the revised Bloom's taxonomy, which is two-dimensional. Now, here I have given some sample learning outcomes just to give you a feel that how we are going to write, because many of you might be familiar with the learning outcomes. So at the remember level, the outcomes will be very simple, such as name 4 parts of a drilling machine. So it is only remembering. They have to recall from the long-term memory. State the Newton's law of third law of motion. If they have crammed up, they will state right away without explaining those things. So this is the lowest level. And please be sure that in your curriculum, remember level outcomes should be very, very less, because they are just a foundation. They need to be taught. But our assessment at the course level will be at the higher level. Some of the few outcomes at understand level: classify soil on the basis of given criteria. So here they will try to understand the information, and based upon the understanding, they will try to classify. Explain Carnot cycle with the help of a graph. This is a understand level. Now, when it comes to the application level, apply the concept of center of gravity and center of mass to explain the motion of a given double cone on a hollow inclined plane. Many of you might have seen this particular video on the YouTube, where on an inclined plane, if you keep a double cone at the lowest level, so you always know that the object always move from top to bottom. But when we are placing a double cone on a hollow inclined plane, and if we keep the double cone at the lowest level, automatically with a slight push, the cone will move automatically upward. And there where the concept of center of gravity and mass is used. So now here we try to develop the capability in the student to apply. Although we taught them center of gravity and center of mass, but how they can apply this concept to explain the motion, this is one of the example at the apply level. And for analysis, the example could be: analyze the given drawing for preparing bill of materials. That is, They will divide the total drawing. They will try to analyze, break up into parts, and then they will prepare the bill of materials. Evaluate level, evaluate the performance of the given product as per available standards. So we need to specify the product and we need to specify which standard to be used. And at the create level, design a 2 kilowatt single phase induction motor. So these are some of the sample outcomes which I just share with you to give you a feel of learning outcomes. And since sir has given me 2 sessions, I try to complete the revised Bloom's taxonomy today, so that tomorrow in the morning session, I can discuss with you the taxonomy of psychomotor domain and affective domain. And by having a clear understanding of the taxonomy in all these 3 domains, you can in a better way interpret the course outcomes. Whenever we are writing the course outcomes, that can be a combination of all the 3 domains. If you are having a course which is having a theory and practical, few of the course outcomes might have dominance of cognitive skills, but there need to have certain outcomes where the dominance of practical skill, then only you can justify the existence of practical in that particular way. Are you not able to see my PPT?
It is visible, ma'am.
There might be some problem at your end, so Sudha madam. So you can refresh your link and you might be able to see. So you will find that in all these examples, these are just the samples. So all these learning outcomes, they start with the verb. So whatever 6 outcomes I have shown you, then you will find while writing the learning outcomes, many of you are familiar with the guideline principle that is used for formulating the learning outcomes. So it must start with the verb, and the trailing end must specify the context. For example, name what you want him to name 4 parts of the drilling machine. So this context can be changed as per the need of the subject. So similarly, you need to take care of using the right verbs when you are framing the outcomes at different levels. So here in this presentation, I will give the copy of my presentation to Bedi sir, and he will share with you. These are some of the sample verbs which are used extensively for the diploma and engineering programs. If you search the internet, you will find many more verbs, but many a times those verbs, they are really very confusing. One thing you have to keep in mind, that whenever we are selecting a verb and writing a learning outcome, it must be your outcome must be observable and measurable. That is the basic and the essential thing which is required. So with this, I complete my presentation. If there are any questions from your end, they are welcome. Any question from any one of you?
Any question from participants?
मैम क्या सभी लेवल्स को टच करना जरूरी है? मतलब अगर हम क्वेश्चन पेपर डिजाइन कर रहे हैं तो
मैडम डिप्लोमा के लिए डेफिनेटली जब हम कॉग्निटिव की बात कर रहे हैं, और चाहे हम साइकोमोटर की भी कल बात करेंगे या अफेक्टिव की भी करेंगे, just for writing the learning outcomes for practice you can do, but it is my personal experience that for diploma program, only for few courses where the student have to create something, only for that you can go up to the create level. But application, if you can develop the skills in the students up to application and analysis, in majority of the programs, that is sufficient. जरूरी नहीं है कि हम हर कोर्स को क्रिएट लेवल तक लेके जाएं, लेकिन जहां पे आप क्रिएट वाले लेवल तक लेके जा रहे हैं उसमें उनका इवैल्यूएशन ऑटोमेटिकली आएगा.
थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू सो मच.
नीलू वर्मा मैम, you want to ask something?
नो सर.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the session.
Okay, any other question? So most of you might be familiar with how to write the learning outcomes, क्योंकि वैसे सुबह से ही बात हो रही है प्रोग्राम आउटकम्स, कोर्स आउटकम्स, और शायद कल आप लोग लिखेंगे भी कोर्स आउटकम्स. Although I have prepared 3 to 4 slides on learning outcomes, but I feel that although some of the time was a bit wasted because of the connection, but I will try to use that particular PPT tomorrow. But I am sure that many of you might be familiar with how to write the learning outcomes. There are some basic rules, or you can say many of you are familiar with this terminology SMART. The learning outcome which you are writing, whether it is at the course level or at the unit level or at the session level, your outcomes must be SMART. By SMART we means that S stand for your outcomes must be specific. They must start with the verb. तो ये आप ध्यान रखिए कि हमारे outcomes verb से start होने चाहिए, student oriented होने चाहिए और specific होने चाहिए. S का मतलब है student oriented, specific and start with the verb. M means your outcome must be measurable and observable. कि हम कह रहे हैं कि हमें ये स्किल डेवलप करनी है, मतलब उसको हम देख भी सकें और उसको मेजर कर, तभी तो आपका अटेनमेंट बताएंगे कि आप 50% हुआ 60%, इफ इट इज मेजरेबल एंड ऑब्जर्वेबल. ए मीन्स अचीवेबल. मैनी अ टाइम्स व्हाट हैपेंस कि हम बहुत बड़े बड़े आउटकम्स लिख देते हैं, but whether it is students are able to achieve that course outcome during the semester, वो हमें देखना है. तो आप जितने भी आपके कोर्स आउटकम्स हैं, ट्राई टू रीलुक, उसको रीलुक करिए कि वो स्टूडेंट्स ओरिएंटेड हैं, स्पेसिफिक हैं, मेजरेबल हैं, ऑब्जर्वेबल हैं, अचीवेबल हैं, रियलिस्टिक हैं और टाइम बाउंड हैं. ऐसा तो नहीं कि हमने बहुत ही जोश में ऐसे बना दिए, बहुत ही हायर लेवल के बना दिए. अदरवाइज देयर विल बी नो डिफरेंस बिटवीन अ डिप्लोमा करिकुलम एंड द करिकुलम बीइंग इम्प्लीमेंटेड बाय आईआईटीज. जैसे मैडम ने कहा कि हमें सारे लेवल करने हैं, हायर लेवल्स, एनालिसिस, इवैल्यूएशन एंड क्रिएशन ऑफ समथिंग न्यू, दिस इज मेनली डन बाय द पर्सन्स हु आर फोकसिंग ऑन द रिसर्च पार्ट. लेकिन कुछ कैपेबिलिटीज, कुछ बेसिक थिंग्स हमें अपने डिप्लोमा इंजीनियर्स में भी डेवलप करनी है. तो उसके लिए हम देख सकते हैं कि कौन से ऐसे कोर्सेज हैं जिनमें हमें इस पे फोकस करना चाहिए. Is that okay?
Okay.
Any questions, any query from any of the participant?
Any question from participant side?
मेरी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट है कि आज जैसे आपके पास शाम का टाइम है, तो जो भी कोर्स आप डील कर रहे हैं उसका जो आपका आउटकम बेस्ड करिकुलम है उसको एक बार आप थोड़ा सामने रख के देखिए कि उसमें कौन सा डोमेन एग्जिस्टिंग है, कौन सा डोमिनेंट है, कौन सी चीज थोड़ा कम जा रही है, ताकि जिस चीज की कमी होगी तो नेक्स्ट रिवीजन में उसको भी हम कैटर कर सकते हैं. ऐसा ये नहीं है कि 100% इन टोटलिटी एवरीथिंग वाज ओके. कई बार क्योंकि आपकी सहायता से ही बना है, बिकॉज ऑफ सम ऑफ द थिंग्स सम ओमिशन माइट बी देयर. तो पहली चीज आप ये देख लीजिए कि आपके कोर्स आउटकम जो हैं वो एप्लीकेशन एंड अबव लेवल के हों. अब आपको ये 6 लेवल मालूम है. और साथ ही साथ इम्प्लीमेंटेशन की तरफ से अगर आप ये 2 डायमेंशनल ग्रिड को यूज करते हैं तो आप डिसाइड कर सकते हैं कि हमें, जैसे हम कहते हैं कि करिकुलम गिव्स यू द ब्रेड्थ एंड द डेप्थ, है ना। तो ब्रेड्थ हमें मालूम चलेगी कि हमको किस लेवल पे पढ़ाना है, और हमें डेप्थ इससे मालूम चलेगी कि हमें किस नॉलेज डायमेंशन तक उसको लेके जाना है, कि सिर्फ फैक्ट ही बताने हैं कि हमें कॉन्सेप्चुअल, जैसे कहते हैं ना कि अब इस स्टूडेंट के कॉन्सेप्ट बिल्कुल क्लियर है इसलिए ये एक्सेल कर रहा है अपने वर्क प्लेस पे। तो conceptual knowledge is really very very essential, and conceptual knowledge not only means understanding, but when you are using a particular principle, you are using classifications, you are developing some sort of models, all those comes under the conceptual knowledge. So thank you very much to all the organizers and to all the participants for investing your time on Sunday. Although really you were patiently hearing right from the morning. So I extend all my thanks to the organizers and to all the participants. In case you are having any query, you can always write to me. My email is with the Bedi sir, and in all the presentations I have also mentioned my email, so you can contact me anytime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the session. Your lecture will surely help our participants to understand the various aspects related to various domains of learning. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir.